Marcel. Howie, are you there? Or Brett?
Yes, Jeff, I'm here, and everyone else can hear you as well.
Brett, or Howie, or Dylan, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jeff, and so can everyone else. Jeff, can you hear me?
You're supposed to be on at 7 o'clock. That's a problem. Well, you must be on a quarter date.
And the time has just gone 7:45 p.m. South Africa time, and a big welcome to everyone around the world. Thank you so much for joining us. We are starting our little pre-chat, and we will, of course, go live at exactly 7 o'clock this evening. And we're joined on our pre-chat by Gidon Kruger and John T. Sachs and Larry Nussbaum. Welcome to all of you. Larry, let's turn on your camera. I want to try get rid of that flare on your lens. So please clean your lens and try and make sure that light is not directly behind you. I don't have to tell you that. You're an electrical engineer. I presume these things come naturally to you. And you're on mute.
I'll sort it out now. Hold on one sec.
Okay, fantastic. Herschel Jarvis, welcome back. You look freezing.
No, I'm taking off my jacket, Howie. I was outside playing with the dogs.
Okay, not with your son, just with the dogs.
Yep, just with the dogs. It's easier.
Okay. John T. Sachs, a good evening to you. Welcome. How are you doing?
Howie, I'm good. I'm a little bit worried. I might be disturbed by a couple of young kids, but you know,
your own or other people's?
I hope they're mine. I haven't done any tests, but I guess so.
Well, you know, you could be like Gidon Kruger and shift your kids into hospital if they make a noise.
Howie, that's an option.
Okay, Gidon, let's get your camera correct. We're currently looking up your nose. We want your camera eye level with, okay, raise your computer a little bit if you can, and let's get you to take about 2/3 of the screen. Adrian, good welcome to you this evening. Nice to see you.
Thank you, likewise.
Where are you joining us from?
My home.
Your home, but you're wearing a jacket. Does that mean we should not go hooray for your power? Is your heating on? I must tell you, I have the best heating system in the world because I have a gas heater, but it needs electricity, but it only needs electricity to run the fan, not for the heating at all. So it means that even during load shedding, I can keep relatively warm.
No, that's good.
So now, Gidon, this is your first webinar that you've done.
That is indeed, Howie.
Okay, we want to push your camera a little bit away from you so we can see your whole face. Look at my face, look at your face, try replicate what it looks like on my screen as opposed to your screen. Look at
must I get closer or further away? Further away.
Okay, just give some part under your chin, some part above your head.
Is that better? Not better?
That's much better. Thank you so much.
Howie, talk us through Cliff Central, your interview today. Or was it yesterday?
So it was actually recorded last week on that very cold morning, the 3 degrees in Johannesburg. And I spent about 49 minutes with Gareth Cliff. And I think we had a good interview. At least I think so. John T, you've watched it. What do you think?
Yeah. I was expecting more airtime for, you know, I wanted to get a better understanding of that, of you. But he veered off path a couple of times, came back onto path. Got a bit of anti-Semitism discussion, which was interesting. There's a couple of terms I've never heard before. I think, was it dog whistle?
Yes, the word dog, the dog whistle or code words.
Yes, yeah. That was interesting. Yeah, I thought it was very entertaining. But I was hoping to get to know the head of the former head of the IEC.
Well, you know, I was executive director. I wasn't head, but you've known me for a long time. You can ask me these questions. Didn't have to wait for Gareth Cliff to ask me these questions.
Fair enough.
But I think it was a good interview. I think I had fun doing it, and I think he enjoyed it.
How many views have you had?
To be quite honest, I don't have a clue.
Oh,
He's putting pressure on you here, Howie. He's got you under the gun here.
Exactly. But all I can say is I'm sure I get a lot more views on these webinars than Gareth Cliff does on his. So for people who don't know what we're talking about, I did an interview with Gareth Cliff and he posted it today. And if you're really bored and have absolutely nothing else to do with your time, I can occupy about 49 minutes of your time, and I'm posting it onto the chat right now.
Is my
and
camera...
Larry, your camera's on. It's asked if I can request you recording, but this is on YouTube anyway, so you will have a
Okay.
recording regardless.
Okay, that's fine.
So Aubrey and Etienne have joined us from Toronto. Aubrey and Etienne, of course, are, I think, looking forward to finding out if we have any electricity in South Africa. But seeing your daughter-in-law just visited from Australia, she can tell you that firsthand. And Chris Yelland, a big welcome to you.
Hi there.
I feel like I bullied you into participating this evening, so I grovel and beg for forgiveness.
I'm here in Ramsgate on holiday, and but I'm sitting in the dark, as you can see, with load shedding. Got a battery operated light keeping my face bright and breezy.
So, Chris, we're busy running an online film festival at the moment, and we're doing it kind of every week and showing some amazing movies. We had Nancy Spielberg, Steven Spielberg's sister, on 2 weeks ago, and we had Jason Hoff's movie 804 last week. We're showing an amazing one coming up this weekend called Getting Away with Murders, a BBC documentary on how the Europeans and Americans allowed Nazis to escape after the Second World War. But what we've actually done is we said to people, you're watching from the comfort of your own home, in the warmth, probably under a duvet. There are many people like you in Ramsgate who don't have an electric light or a rechargeable light. There are many people in the townships that when the electricity goes off, they sit in the dark. And there are many people this winter who will freeze because they don't even have something like a hot water bottle they can prepare before load shedding. So we asked our viewers to just donate some money, and we have so far bought 1,100 rechargeable lamps and 1,100 hot water bottles. We have distributed in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban, in townships around the country, to our community as well. But 1,100 people will suddenly have light and warmth because of the generosity of our viewers. And it's just been absolutely amazing. And we'll continue this weekend when we show the next movie as well. But it's just been such an honor and a pleasure to provide a platform to people to be able to do some good this winter.
Fantastic, good stuff.
So what we do is we're going to go live in about 8 minutes. Of course, people are watching us already, and we're broadcasting on YouTube and on Facebook and on Zoom, and we're expecting a relatively large audience tonight. We expect about 3,500 people will be watching us across all platforms this evening. We think that's big, but for example, the movie that we showed on Sunday night, which was called Sylvia, Tracing Blood, has had more than 20,000 people view it since Sunday. So
Yeah.
That's amazing, I must say.
yeah. So we've been watched about 3.5 million times. This is broadcast Churchill, I think, number 155 or 156 in the last 3 years.
Yeah, when did that kick off? Sort of in about May of 2020.
March 2020, the week we went into lockdown, and that week we did our first webinar, if you remember, on doctors giving people advice on what to do with their clothes and their shoes and their shopping when they come home.
Yes.
I see Claude is asking us something. What's the link for YouTube? Claude, what are you looking for? And tell us and we'll help you. So Chris, this is as interactive as it gets. We have people interrupting us the whole time, asking questions the whole time, but you know, these are our lives and we love to have a conversation with our audience. So let me introduce
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, please continue.
Now, I wanted to interrupt you as you were saying that, you know, that's part of the webinar. Have you had 1 million views yet?
Oh, we've about 3.5 million views.
Wow, that's a number. Impressive.
And the terrifying thing is the most watched thing we did was actually something on ivermectin, and someone stole the clip and put it on YouTube, and they themselves got 1 million views on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's been quite a fascinating journey. But we're watched around the world. Larry Nussbaum, put yourself on mute while you tumble around your lounge, please.
We need to have Hatsola on standby there, Howie. I think Larry's going to get himself into trouble.
So for those people who don't know what Hatzola is a volunteer ambulance service that the Jewish community run. And on the front cover of this week's Jewish Report, and we'll talk about it in 5 minutes when we go live, there's a Hatzola conference taking place in South Africa that people from all over the world have come for this amazing conference of volunteer medics and doctors and ambulance services. And they're on the plane from America where one of the passengers collapses. And it just so happens that they're two Hatzola medics coming to the conference on the airplane. And they save his life, and they work on this guy for 12 hours of a 15-hour flight. And there's an ambulance waiting for him when he arrives at our Tampa airport, and they save this guy's life. If ever you were in the right place at the right time with the correct people, it's an amazing feel-good story. So if you're planning to collapse on an airplane, please make sure that everyone else on your flight is heading to a Hatzola conference.
Wow. Amazing.
So Chris, can I introduce you to some of these interesting people on the panel? Okay, you're on mute. Let's get Chris.
Sorry about that.
No problem. As you move the lighting around, you now look like you got one hell of a suntan in Ramsgate. I hope it's warmer.
I'm like a red Indian.
Exactly. So Larry Nussbaum, who you see on the panel, Larry's an electrical engineer. And after you've given us a broad overview of what's happening with electricity and what to expect from winter, Larry and Gidon are going to take us through a process of, well, how do you cope this winter? And we're going to start with things like gas fireplaces and gas stoves and torch lights, and we're then going to move on to trolley inverters and UPSs for your laptop, and then we're going to go on to, well, do you fit an inverter and a battery into your home? And then we're going to land up, well, after that, do you put on solar? And then Adrian's going to take us through what do you do for big installations, for entire townhouse complexes and office blocks. That's Adrian's area of expertise, where I don't know if you know the guys from Hooray Power, but they will come and be your alternative energy supplier for your entire factory, etc. And John T, he has a very interesting business. They operate in the 12B space. And they take the tax incentive that you can get by installing major renewable energy, and they actually allow you to get a tax break. So you know Winston Churchill said you should never let a crisis go to waste. Well, John T and Jeff, who are joining us this evening, are going to explain to you how to make money out of the chaos that Eskom has created in our lives. And also joining us on the screen now is Gidon Kruger. Gidon, hi, welcome again. Gidon's connecting. Gidon, are you with us?
Hello, Howie, hello.
Hello. So we're just introducing Chris to everyone on the screen, and Gidon, amongst the things that he does, he imports trolleys, inverter trolleys, and other equipment for load shedding into the country. So Chris, it's amazing, don't you think, how many people have just grabbed the opportunity that's been created from all of this and taken advantage of it? You must see that every day.
Well, you know, the rooftop solar market and the battery storage market at the domestic level and sort of under the radar is just exploding. The import statistics show very dramatic things. And more than that, also look at the registrations of the larger systems that require registration with NERSA, that is also exploding. So this crisis is driving a lot of alternative energy, yeah, people have to make a plan. You know, people have to take ownership of their own future. If you wait for government, you're going to wait a long time.
Yeah. Can I ask one question just before we begin? Because we've seen this course case where Eskom shut off an entire municipality or shut down the option of an entire municipality getting alternative energy supply from an alternative source. And I think, Adrian, you mentioned to me as well that you can't become the municipal supplier or across multiple urban a supplier of electricity. Chris, when are we going to get rid of all of this red tape and allow business to actually fill the gap properly?
Well, fortunately, the crisis is kind of driving things, and things that would not happen quickly without a crisis. You know, these things are now pushing ahead. I mean, you've seen the Minister of Electricity has been in China this last week. discussing everything from domestic, commercial, industrial, agricultural, mining, and the utility scale, solar PV and battery storage and other options. For my sins, I'm the energy advisor to the Chinese company Huawei. Huawei make inverters. In fact, they're the world's biggest manufacturer of solar PV inverters. And yesterday, the Minister of Electricity was at Huawei in China, looking at what they're doing, and they're doing incredible things in China. I mean, the rollout of solar PV and storage and wind in China is on a staggering scale. And I think South Africa is looking to them for ideas and solutions, technology, people, partnering. So there's and also finance, money, logistics, contracting skills. There's a lot. What may appear big for us is not big for the Chinese. So a lot can be brought to the table, and it's driving this crisis is driving innovation and change in a way that nothing else has before.
Cool. Well, there Jeff is joining us as well. Jeff, as you join, I'm going to ask everyone to go on mute, turn off their cameras except for Herschel and myself. Chris, we're going to bring you back in another minute or two with Gidon as well. We just want to do an introduction to everyone. So Jeff, let's turn off your camera. Gidon, your camera should be going off, and Chris as well. And a huge welcome to everyone this evening to the 155th broadcast brought to you by the South African Jewish Report. In South Africa, the time has just gone 8 p.m. And Hirsch, it's such a pleasure to be back on another relatively chilly evening in Johannesburg.
Absolutely, Howie. I was away at Sun City. It was interesting because I'm in Sun City for 10 years. It's the third time I've been in literally a couple of months on a holiday, on a conference, and there doesn't seem to be load shedding at Sun City. Either the generators are so far away that you can't hear them, or they have some of their own energy supply, but it's an enormous resort, as you know, across many, many different parts of it. And there doesn't seem to be load shedding at Sun City, which is simply quite amazing.
So Dylan tells me this is the 156th broadcast that we've done from the South African Jewish Report. So a welcome to everyone around the world. Please remember, this is a dialogue. It's not a monologue. So tell us where you are. Please use the the chat section on Zoom, or if you're watching us on YouTube or on Facebook, please use the chat section there as well, and tell us where in the world you're watching us from. And if you have questions for any of our guests, please feel free, because Dylan's on control tonight. So even if you're on YouTube or on Facebook, he'll bring your questions across to this platform as well. And we'll be able to ask any of our experts any of the questions that you have. So a big welcome to everyone this evening. Don't forget that these webinars are brought to you by the South African Jewish Report, and I hope you've gone out to collect your latest newspaper. So Dylan, can you show us exactly what's front cover of the newspaper this week? Don't forget, you can go and pick up your hard copy of the newspaper at Spar or Checkers or Pick and Pay or Discam or all over the world, or all over the country, in your spaza shop, your butchery. We distribute free of charge in about 240 locations around South Africa. And I was just telling people about this amazing story about two people coming to South Africa for the Hatsola conference, and they're on the airplane from the United States. These people have never met each other before, but one of the passengers collapses in the bathroom, and they remove the bathroom door and they take him out, and these two Hatsola medics actually stabilize him, work on this patient for 12 hours until they land at OR Tambo Airport, and then an ambulance is waiting for him, and they save the guy's life. It's one of those fantastic feel-good stories. You have to actually read and be part of it, because it's just about being in the right place at the right time with some remarkable people. And it just so happens that Rabbi Shishler is on the airplane. So what does he do? He makes them all put on tefillin, and they say a brocha on the airplane as well. So it's a great feel-good story. Go and pick up your copy of the South African Jewish Report in any of those 240 locations around the country where we distribute free of charge. And if you're unable to get a hard copy of the newspaper, don't forget you can always go online. And if you go to www.sajr.co.za, our website, you have two options. Option number one, you can either click on the edition and download the entire edition, or alternatively, you can look at each of the individual stories as well. So don't forget the address is www.sajr.co.za. And nominations are now open for the Juice Report, the Absa Juice Achiever Awards. So you can go nominate people. There's a bit.ly link. It's bit.ly JAA23nom, JAA23nom, obviously Juice Achiever Awards 23 nominations. And we've got a whole set, in fact, 10 categories: Lifetime Achievement Award, Entrepreneur, Business, Business Leadership, Professional Excellence, Humanitarian, Community Service, Art, Sport, Science and Culture. You can go and nominate anyone for any of those awards. Here are all the categories that are coming up now. So don't forget, the link to nominate anyone is bit.ly link, JAA23nom. We want to see how many nominations we can get in this year. The awards are set for October, 21st of October. It's coming soon. We need to handle probably close to 1,000 nominations that will come in this year. So don't forget to please go do that. We also are telling you that we'll send out the details tomorrow, but we've got an amazing movie to show you this weekend. And what's slightly different this weekend is we can only show this movie on Zoom. We can't broadcast it on Facebook or YouTube because the rights have been sold in 18 countries. So they've only allowed us to broadcast on Zoom. So what we're going to do is we're going to have multiple showings, because we know people watch us in Australia and the United States and the UK and Bangkok and Panama. So we're going to make sure that, in fact, you can choose one of 4 different showings at a time that suits you. We'll send out the details for that tomorrow. So with that, great that you've all joined us. I'm going to ask both Gideon Kruger and Chris Yelland to turn on their cameras, because we've got some important things to talk about tonight. So Chris, you're in Ramsgate with no electricity. How ironic that the country's expert on electricity is sitting in the dark, but a huge welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. But Chris,
thanks. Great to be here, Howard. And yes, sitting in the dark, but I've got battery lights. I've got my inverter. I've got a battery backup for my TV and I've got a JoJo tank for water. So somehow, we just carry on. We have to make a plan, look after ourselves, look after our families, look after our community, and we can't just wait for government all the time.
If we wait for government, nothing's ever going to happen. I hope you took with a spade and a shovel to fill in some potholes while you're there.
There are some big potholes around, yes, very big.
So, Chris, the big question that we have is, what should we expect from Eskom this winter? There were predictions of going to stage 8, but we've actually had a fairly good last 2 weeks. We've been off stage 6 now for 2 weeks, and things seem to be stabilizing. Are we just getting lucky, or have things actually improved?
Or are we treeing up our country's entire diesel supply?
Well, it's a little bit of everything. And, one's got to understand what load shedding is all about to understand where we are right now. First of all, load shedding, is the balancing of supply and demand. And when you don't have enough supply and demand is too high, to bring the system into balance, you have to shed some load or reduce demand, or else you've got to increase supply. And actually it's a combination of both. So why do we have such limited load shedding right now? Well, certainly a lot of the so-called analysts are and the media love a good horror story, and winter is a period where people think it's a very high demand for electricity, and so we're going to have worse load shedding in winter. Well, historically that's not the case. Historically, actually, we've had the worst load shedding in summer. You remember the first stage 6 load shedding we had was in December 2019, and so if you look at years gone by, the winter months haven't been the worst. Why? Because demand is higher in winter, not as high as we think though, but demand is higher in winter. The answer is that supply is also higher in winter. And as I say, load shedding is the balancing of supply and demand. So you can either increase supply to bring the system into balance, or you can reduce demand to bring the system into balance. But if you increase supply, then load shedding will decrease. And that is what has been happening. But at the same time, demand has been lower than last year, quite significantly lower. And there's a number of reasons for that too, which I can explain. But let's first of all look at the supply side. Why is supply higher in winter? Well, first of all, Eskom do less maintenance in winter, and therefore more plant is available for duty during the winter months. And not only that, of course, most of the work, maintenance is done in summer months, things like boiler tube leaks and all kinds of maintenance work. It gets the plant in a better state to cope with the winter demand. So supply is higher in winter, but not only that, wind power is stronger in the winter months. The wind in the coastal areas blows more than in the summer months. That's helping significantly, actually. And secondly, under the radar, there has been a lot of rooftop solar PV and battery storage in domestic, commercial, agricultural installations, and that is helping to increase the supply and reduce the burden on Eskom. So all in all, on the supply side, things are improving. And by the way, let's not take away from Eskom, their plant performance over the last few weeks has improved slightly. And that's also making a difference. So all of these things add up on the supply side. On the demand side, yes, winter demand is higher than summer demand, but not as high as one may think, because during the winter months, the price of electricity goes up by about 3 times for large industrial customers. And so there's huge incentive, especially with the increasing Eskom prices year by year, plus the fact that the winter 3 months, June, July, August, the price of electricity for industrial customers goes up 3 to 4 times higher than summer. And there are many energy-intensive industries that cut back dramatically on production, that use those 3 months to do intensive maintenance, especially the smelters. They literally cannot afford to operate during the winter months. The price of electricity is too high, and they are very, electricity is a major input cost of theirs. So they shut down and they operate off stockpiles. So they stockpile during summer, a bit of extra stockpiles, and they operate off their stockpiles during winter. And that enables them to dramatically reduce demand. So whilst domestic demand is higher, industrial demand brings it down again. And not only that, but now also people are becoming much more conscious. Price is affecting them. They're using electricity more efficiently. They're even switching from electricity to gas for heating, for cooking and others. So alternative sources of electricity, and of course, alternative energy, battery storage, solar PV is all helping to reduce the demand on the Eskom grid by people doing their own generation. So put all these factors together, and suddenly we have quite a significantly reduced load shedding this winter. Is it sustainable? Well, time will tell. I do think that there is light at the end of the tunnel. I'm now talking about beyond winter. We know that by the end of this year, according to Eskom's plans, and let's just hope it goes according to plan, because many plans don't happen to pan out in the world of Eskom. But according to their plan, Kusile Unit 1, 2, 3, and 5, that's 4 units of 800 megawatts will come on stream by the year end. And next year, another 2 units, one at Medupi Unit 4, and then Kusile Unit 6 will come on stream. So that's going to add a total of 5 units, 5 800 megawatts units, 4,000 megawatts. That's going to make a big difference, a very big difference, as long as it comes on stream, and as long as a whole lot of other things don't break down to offset the gains of the added generation capacity. If there's huge breakdowns in other areas, it could offset this. So I do think winter is not going to be as bad as expected, and we're probably likely to see intermittent load shedding on and off. And towards the end of the year, I think it's going to reduce quite significantly if the Eskom units come on stream as planned.
So, Chris, they say fools and prophets predict the future, and I know you're not a fool. So I'm going to ask you to actually do some predictions here, but I want to run through almost the details. So am I correct that at Kusile, where the 4 chimneys collapsed, we're rebuilding them, and they should be fixed by the end of this year. And I think we've done away with some of the common emission problems or regulatory requirements to allow them to do that. So that's why those 4 units are coming back.
That's 3 units, unit 1, 2, and 3. The other unit that's going to come on this year is Kusile unit 5. Now that wasn't affected by that chimney failure. That was a fire. They had a fire during the commissioning of unit number 5. It caused some damage. The damage is being repaired. So unit number 5, which has never been in commercial service yet. It was during commissioning that this fire broke out and caused the damage, but hopefully that'll be fixed and it'll be brought into commercial service before the year end. So a total of 4 units, 3 from the faulty flue gas duct and the chimney problems, and 1 from the fire at Kusile.
The one that we blew up by mistake, that was at Medupi, wasn't it?
Medupi unit 4. That unit is being repaired, or put it this way, apparently they bought a second-hand generator from somewhere I think from the Netherlands or somewhere in Europe. They bought a second-hand generator, and they say it's going to be installed by about July next year. Well, I hope they're right. It's a big job. You know, replacing a generator sounds like a simple job, but it's a massive job, and it still hasn't arrived in South Africa. So let's just hold thumbs that people are not being over optimistic and over promising and under delivering, as often happens, and that it will be delivered on time. Let's hope.
And then
no predictions.
No predictions on that one. But Coburg's also busy being refueled at the moment, and that's due by the end of December, isn't it?
Yeah, no, look, Coburg is a complicated story. So unit number 1 at Coburg, which is a 900 megawatts unit, is off at the moment, undergoing life extension. They are replacing what is known as the 3 steam generators. They're not actually generators. They're heat exchangers that create steam. They call them steam generators, but they generate steam. These have to be replaced because the old ones have reached the end of their life, and the new ones are being fitted. At the same time, they are refueling and doing maintenance. That unit should come back on stream in the middle of September. That's 900 megawatts, on stream by the end of September, which sounds wonderful. Another 9, but don't get too excited, because 1 month later, unit number 2 is switching off. Okay, so that whatever 900 megawatts comes back on from unit number 1 is going to be taken off by unit number 2. And that's going to be off for like 7 months while they do the same life extension on unit number 2. Now, unit number 2 has already been off for 7 months, but they didn't do the job properly. So they had to bring it back on without having done the job. And then they did unit number 1, which is in progress. Then they're going to do unit number 2 is going to go off again so they can do the job properly this time. It's going to be off for 7 months. And then it's going to come on sometime, I think about April next year, 2024. And don't get too excited, because when that comes back on, unit number 1 has got to go off again for 200 days, starting on the 24th of July. So we're likely to see a unit of Coburg has been out for a total of about 2 years. It's going to be, in fact, more than 2 years. And that's also just adding to the problem. So Coburg is not a short-term win. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of work to be done.
There was also one of our turbines that we sent to China that the Chinese dropped.
Okay, that wasn't a turbine. That was one of the steam generators. This is a fascinating story. I want to tell you this because this replacing of the steam generators at Coburg. There are 3 steam generators per nuclear reactor at Coburg. These are not generators. They are heat exchangers that generate steam. Okay, so the order was placed with a company called Arriva. Arriva then was bought out by Electricity de France and changed its name to Framatome. It's a long story. But Framatome were manufacturing these 6 steam generators, and they started doing the manufacture, and they ran into huge technical problems, and they couldn't complete the job in France. So they have a partner in China who does this work as well. And they decided that they're going to have to ship these things to China. So they shipped them to China. Now, each one of these things weighs like about 200 tons. And it required a Ukrainian Antonov aircraft, these massive freight aircraft, 6 charter flights, 1 steam generator per Antonov aircraft. So 6 of these half-completed steam generators, the forgings, were sent over to China by air. And when they got to China, the Chinese sort of inspected them, and they decided they were beyond, they couldn't complete that. They'd have to start again from scratch. After flying these things out at Eskom's cost, by the way. And the Eskom chief nuclear officer at the time, David Nichols, told me that this was the most expensive transport of scrap metal in the history of humankind. They had to scrap these things and start again. It caused a 3-year delay in the project. But these 6 generators have now been delivered to Eskom. They are now on site, made in China, not in France. The French, they had problems. They couldn't finish the job. But yeah, this is what goes on in the nuclear industry, I must tell you.
I mean, it sounds actually ridiculous, but let us say realistically for the next few months of winter, I think we're on stage 3 at the moment. Are we likely to be more or less on stage 3? And I say more or less because, sometimes it will be better and sometimes it will be worse. But on average, are we likely to be on stage 3 for most of winter?
It's impossible to say. Let's just tell you that, the level of load shedding depends on how much generation is unavailable at Eskom. Now, there's a certain amount that is unavailable due to so-called planned maintenance. Now, because it's planned maintenance, it is predictable. Eskom will tell you, months in advance how much they've got planned to be out, week by week, on planned maintenance, because it's planned and scheduled, and it's carefully done, hopefully. The thing that's not easy to predict is what we call the unplanned breakdowns. These are unplanned breakdowns that occur randomly. Now, so sitting on top of a level of planned outages is a very noisy, unplanned outages, which is just like predictable and unpredictable and random. So it's like noise on top of the predictable graph. And you can have a good week, you can have a bad week, you can have a good day, a bad day, a good month, a bad month. Right now we're going through a good week or 2, but we could just as easily have a bad week or 2. And it's not predictable because it's unplanned. So there's no way that I can tell you that next week, I can forecast the future and tell you that certain unplanned breakdowns are going to occur. Nobody knows. They're unplanned. That's the nature of a breakdown. So I can't tell you whether, but my gut feel is that one shouldn't be over-optimistic. You can have good weeks and you can have bad weeks, and it's kind of random. So we've had a couple of good weeks. Great. Let's hope it lasts. The longer, the better.
Okay, so I'll get Herschel and get on to ask some questions in a second. And anyone who's watching us, please feel free to post any questions in the chat on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Zoom, and we'll make sure that Chris gets to answer those questions as well. But before I hand over to Herschel and then get on for their questions, Chris, earlier this week I watched Franz Cronje on a webinar. And he said, well, I predicted that in fact things would improve because we decided to not mothball any of our coal plants, and therefore we have electricity. But my understanding from Gidon is that in fact we had no plans to mothball any coal plants over the next 18 months.
This is not true.
Yeah, so I mean, Chris can talk more in depth with the plan. So I mean, there is the integrated resource plan, and Eskom have a plan where they are supposed to be decommissioning a whole lot of plants over the next 18 months. Obviously, it's very political, and the electricity minister is now getting involved and trying to obviously extend certain delays of certain coal power stations. But I'll let Chris talk a bit more to that, and exactly a lot of politicking in whose camp does it actually sit in? Does it sit in Gwede Matashe's camp, or does it actually sit in the electricity minister's camp? And who is ultimately responsible to say, yes, close it down, or yes, keep it going.
So Chris,
Okay,
Chris, just
so-
so you were saying not correct.
Yeah, it's not correct to say that the delaying of the coal-fired power station decommissioning is the reason why we are having less load shedding today. That's not correct at all, and it's misinformation. Let me just try and explain the correct situation, and I think it's been alluded to, and it's this. There is a schedule that Eskom has produced, and it's in the integrated resource plan for electricity, the planned decommissioning schedule. And this planned decommissioning schedule extends, up to 2030 in the integrated resource plan. So it doesn't all happen at once, not all happening like now or in the next week or two or a month or three. It's a program of decommissioning and shutting down old units over a period of time. Now, this hasn't happened yet. It has started. For example, Komati Power Station. The last unit at Komati Power Station has finally shut down. These are not big units. These are small generators. And Komati's got about 8 or 9 generators, and the last one was finally decommissioned last year. Okay, now the plan, now there is talk. Should we extend the life of some of these old power stations that are due for decommissioning over the next years until year 2030? Should we delay some of these a little bit? Or should we actually spend a bit of money on them and extend their life for maybe 10 years? Or should we just run them until they break? In other words, we don't spend too much money on them. We don't put a lot of effort in, but we don't decommission. We just carry on running them until they can't run anymore. And that decision hasn't been made yet. That's why I say it's nonsense to say, that the improvement in load shedding is because they've been delayed. They haven't yet been delayed. They're talking about delaying them. They're discussing it. They're doing some studies. They're doing very careful analysis as to which ones they could extend and which ones, they can't, and finally make a decision. And ultimately, they're waiting for a report by a German consortium of consultants, specialist consultants in the coal-fired power business that is due to report in July. This was a study announced by the Minister of Finance in his budget speech. There's been discussion about it, but the final decision will only be taken after this report comes in from the German consultants and after a lot of other studies. No, we're not just going to take other people's word for it, but we'll hear what they have to say, or Eskom and government will hear what they have to say, and ultimately decisions will be made. But those decisions have not yet been made, and therefore it cannot be the reason why we're not having load shedding at the moment, because the decisions haven't even been taken yet. So I just want to make that point.
Cool. Hirsch, you had some questions.
Yeah, Chris, I wanted to ask questions. So there's been some fanfare made of this 1,000 megawatts, I think, purchased from Zambia. And I was listening to an interview today, I think, that said that it's all very well purchasing the power from Zambia, but I'm not sure that we have a way to connect it into our grid. Is that a part of the short-term solution, or is this sort of just an emergency backup if we need it?
Yeah, look, the 1,000 megawatt you're talking about is from Mozambique.
Mozambique, sorry.
There is some power from Zambia. Zambia is connected to South Africa via the South African power pool. There is a grid connection, interconnection between Zambia, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Botswana, Swaziland, Lesotho, etc. So they're all part of the Southern African grid. So there are certain connections that exist already. And there are small amounts of power available from Zambia and from Botswana at certain hours of the evening, actually, in the case of Botswana. In the case of Mozambique, there was talk of 100 megawatts virtually immediately. And there are interconnections between Mozambique and South Africa. And then there was talk that this could be expanded up to 1,000 megawatts, although it's very vague as to exactly what this 1,000 megawatts, where it's coming from and what it consists of. But my one possible area, which is in southern Mozambique, is south of Maputo, is a place called Matola, and that is where the so-called Mosul aluminium smelter is situated. It's in a coastal area, and there already is a power line from South Africa's grid through Swaziland to Mosul, and South Africa supplies Mosul with about 1,000 megawatts of power. And there's talk of setting up an LNG, liquefied natural gas, offloading station, regasification station, and gas to power plant, 2 by 500 megawatts open cycle gas turbine plant at Matola. And this would then feed into the line from South Africa. And effectively, what it would effectively do is reduce the power that South Africa is supplying to Mosul. So it has the effect of generating into the South African grid, but it's actually not generating, it's just reducing the power that is currently coming. But it means 1,000 megawatts from the South African grid that can be used for South Africa instead of exported. So that's one of the possibilities. I'm not sure that can be delivered in 6 months, though. I will be quite impressed if that could come online, because they haven't built the power plant yet. The lines basically exist, but you need to maybe put in transformers and substations and switchgear and the actual power plant itself and the whole gas infrastructure. I'd be very surprised if they could do that in 6 months, but that's one of the options that is available. But the short and tall of it is there are some line interconnectors. I mean, there's the Kahora Bassa line. It's a DC link. And there are some generating units, they call them gas engines, generating on the Mozambique side, but transferring power to South Africa. So these are options that can be explored.
So Gideon, you had a question, and Chris, I'm going to try to get through as many of the audience questions as possible. I want to be respectful of your time because you're on holiday, so I don't want to keep you longer than 10 minutes. So quick questions, quick answers. Gideon, after your question, I'm going to ask questions, a few questions that come from the audience about political leadership, about fraud and sabotage at Eskom. But my most important question that I'm going to come back to is I want you to give people advice. So if we have townhouse complexes that are looking to spend hundreds of thousands of rands in equipment, is it for the next 6 months? Should they wait to first see what's happening or not? And that's the last question I'm going to ask you. But before that, Gideon, you had a question from Chris.
Yeah, so I think it's regarding obviously what Chris alluded to with regards to the energy availability factor always being a lot higher in the winter months versus the summer months, and that is a function of reducing the planned maintenance, combination of the Eskom plant performing better in the colder climate. I think so. I've got two questions to Chris. The first one is, so I think we can. I mean, coming winter, we're not going to hit that stage 8 doomsday. But what happens come August, September, October? And again, this is obviously a view and not calling to a specific stage of load shedding. But now the plant essentially is going to start performing a bit worse in the summer months, the spring and summer months, as well as obviously the energy intensive user group is going to come back online. Electricity prices are going to come back to the summer tariff. And then are we back to, so we may make it through winter, but then are we back to where we were at square one, stage 6, 7, 8 in the summer months? That's just question one. And question two is car power ships. We haven't really talked about that. I have heard that it could, even if it is approved, it could still take up to 18 months because of necessary transmission lines and transformers that need to be built.
Okay, cool. Chris,
yeah.
Quick answers to those.
Okay, look, you don't need to take my word or my prediction for it. You can go to the Eskom website. They have a document there they publish every single week, and it looks at the year ahead, the next 52 months, and it color codes it as green, orange, or red. Green means no load shedding. Orange means some reasonable possibility of load shedding. Red means a high probability of load shedding. Well, for the weeks those summer weeks ahead, in fact, most of the weeks till the end of the year are color-coded red. So that's Eskom's forecast, and I would go by that. So I would say there is a high probability of continued load shedding. I'm not suggesting stage 8 load shedding, but let's say between stage 2 and stage 6 load shedding, it could certainly happen, in the summer months ahead. And that's my opinion. And it's not only my opinion; it's what Eskom's forecast shows on their website. On the car power shift front, the whole car power shift project is mired in all kinds of complications with environmental authorizations, ports authorizations, Eskom power purchase agreements. None of these are in place. And not only that, there's 2 legal challenges in progress, one in which I'm kind of involved in through my connection with OUTA, organization undoing tax abuse, has a legal challenge, and so does called the Green Connection. So there are 2 legal challenges in progress. The chances of it going ahead with a 20-year power purchase agreement, as was originally planned, I think are very, very low at the moment. The Minister of Electricity has made it absolutely clear that they're not looking at 20 years, they're looking at 5 years. Now, what this means is they've either got to convince PowerShip to keep their price exactly the same with a 5-year term as they would have had on a 20-year term. Then they can probably give the order to call PowerShip for a 5-year, 3 to 5 year contract if they can keep the price the same. However, that's very unlikely, because when you have a much shorter term, you have to amortize certain costs over a much shorter period. It pushes the price up. Not only that, but the gas price, due to the Ukrainian war and the whole conflict, it means that PowerShip would probably want to adjust their price. Now, that means there is no way that you can get away without going out for another tender. In other words, there has to be a new procurement process. You cannot negotiate a price, a change in the term, the contract of a public procurement. Constitution of South Africa doesn't allow that. You have to have a competitive, open, transparent system. Okay, there are always some loopholes in these things. Like if it's a real emergency, then you can sometimes bypass some of the laws. But I would say that if they're going to reduce the term, which is what they seem to have to do, they're going to have to go out for another tender process. The public procurement process can take 1 year to 2 years just to issue the tender, get bids, make an award, and reach financial close. I mean, the existing car power projects haven't achieved financial close, more than 2 years after they awarded the contract. They haven't got financial close because the banks pulling out and this sort of thing. So I think, and the bottom line is the legal challenges are still going on. Okay, if they issue a new tender, then the old legal challenges will fall away, because those old legal challenges are in respect of the old tender. So if there's a brand new tender, okay, those legal challenges will fall away, but then you've got a new procurement process, time consuming. I think 18 months is optimistic.
Okay, Chris, quick fire questions, quick answers. Number one, do you lie in bed at night worried about a total grid collapse?
No, it crosses my mind, and I'm giving presentations to banks and financial institutions and insurance companies about the subject. But I don't worry. I'm not stocking up with baked beans.
Okay. Next question. Sabotage at Eskom. Is that a thing of the past, or may we still see it ongoing?
Yeah, I don't think it's over. There are all kinds of political machinations. There's labor disputes, and it all depends on what you call sabotage. Some people call, a go slow at a critical installation, some kind of sabotage, or is it just a labor dispute? Okay, picketing outside a power station, preventing coal trucks from entering. Is that industrial action, or is that sabotage? Okay, you can argue these things, but I think sabotage, has a somewhat different meaning to a labor dispute. I think it's there. It happens. It's hard to pinpoint, and I'm sure it happens probably more than has been identified, because it's hard to sometimes identify these things. I don't think it's over, but I think a lot more effort is being put in by the authorities to get this under control.
Do you ever fear that if the government get electricity right before next year's elections, that you may see some political parties trying to disrupt that by sabotaging some of the power stations?
I don't. I'm really loath to believe in complicated conspiracy theories. I think the old adage, never put down to conspiracy that which can be explained by incompetence, is probably the best way of looking at things. It's so easy to say there was a bolt in the stator. It was sabotage. The old Kuberg story, remember the bolt in the stator, Alec Irwin, quick to make these allegations, very slow to, in fact, it was subsequently proved that it was Rotec, Eskom's subsidiary company, who negligently left a bolt in the stator. It had nothing to do with sabotage. So I'm reluctant to think about these things, on a grand political conspiracy sort of basis. Yes, sabotage can take place. Yes, there can be individuals doing these things, but I don't think there's a grand political conspiracy.
Is there political will, asks a number of people, to actually solve this problem?
I think with the growing election, with the election looming next year, the political will is increasing, driven not by the crisis itself per se, but driven by the possibility of loss of electoral support and power in that sense. I do think the political will is growing. And let me just say something about our Minister of Electricity. Easy to criticize. We know that he loves a bit of publicity and he loves the camera and all of that. Fine, that's okay by me. I don't mind that, as long as he's doing something really good and positive. And one thing I can say that I think is a good sign is that he has these other ministers. There's the Minister of Public Enterprises, that's Pravin Gordhan, and there's the Minister of Energy, that's Gwedi Mantashe. And they live in their own silos. They're each responsible for certain things, and there doesn't seem to have the urgency doesn't seem to have got to them in any way. All of a sudden, we have this new Minister of Electricity, which has got a lot of energy. And it's good to see a person with a lot of energy. Like, he's running around, he's in China, he's in power stations, he's flying here and there, he's talking in the media and all of that. And he's got the energy, number one. Number two, he is able to cross these silos. You have the Eskom silo, the strict Eskom must stay in its own lane silo. They really are quite limited about what they can do, because they're not responsible for new generation capacity, for example. And they're financially constrained. So there's all kinds of things that they can't do. But if you have a minister who can cross these different silos and get involved where Gwedi used to get involved where Pravin used to get involved where Eskom and the municipalities, and cross all these boundaries and actually work together to solve the bloody crisis. And that's what he's doing. He's showing a bit of energy about it. And I think it's having an effect. He's able to bring new ideas, new generation, whether it's rooftop solar, whether it's power from Mozambique, whether it's fixing Eskom's old coal-fired power plants, all kinds of initiatives coming together. And he is in charge of what is called NECOM, the National Energy Crisis Committee. This is the committee that was set up by President Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa was the chairman of this committee, but he's now appointed Ramakgopa, the Minister of Electricity, to say, you take over this. I can't do it. I'm the president. And Ramakgopa is showing, I think, the necessary energy and networking and getting around to drum up across all these silos what is needed to bring new ideas. And for me, that's refreshing. So I'm optimistic.
So Gilda keeps on asking questions about the environment. And we've seen, for example, this week, Denmark and the Netherlands just gave us, I think, $1 billion to help green ourselves. Have we gone all of these desires to go to an environmentally friendly energy solution because we're in a state of crisis?
Well, that's the danger. The danger is that we think short term, and you know what? The environment is always, unfortunately, the sacrificial lamb. When there's a crisis, the sacrificial lamb is the environment, because it's somebody else's problem. But actually, it's all our problem. And I believe the world is facing an existential threat. And I think South Africa, sometimes we try and say, oh, but I mean, Africa, we're just a small part of the problem. Africa is a small part of the problem, but South Africa is a big part of the problem. South Africa, with Eskom and Sasol, stand out like a sore thumb on the international stage. Sasol's Secunda plant is the biggest point source of carbon dioxide emissions in the world. And South Africa is not this innocent party. South Africa is part of the problem. We need to stand up with other people that are part of the problem and do something about the problem. So I think we've got to take the climate very seriously. And the thing about it is that there are solutions. It is the least cost approach that uses the least water, that is the least damaging to the environment, that creates the most jobs, and has the least CO2 emissions and the least pollution. That's the solution. We need to go green electricity. It's the lowest hanging fruit, and it ticks all the boxes. I think too often we are held back by the vested interests in the coal lobby, the petrochemical lobby, who will come up with all kinds of misinformation in order to protect their interests, their commercial business interests.
So, Chris, our last question before we allow you to go back on holiday and go for a walk along the beach in the darkness there, is practical advice for people. There are a lot of people who want to spend money now and put on solar, or put out generators, or put in inverters for their factories, for their homes, for their townhouse complexes, and they're enormously expensive solutions. Knowing what you know and what you predict over the next 6 to 12 months, do you say, go ahead and do it because you need to move to something solar and environmentally friendly in the future? Or do you say, hold on a few months, see what happens, and maybe you don't have to go through all of that expenditure?
Now, I think ultimately, we need to move away from this thinking that government is here to do everything for us, and we need to start taking ownership of our own future. Now, that doesn't mean to say we must all rush out and buy a rooftop solar PV and a battery system that's going to cost you 200,000 Rand. Well, most people don't even have that kind of money, as capex. But I mean, you can rent a system, you can go to your bank, you can put it on your bond. So there are various, ways to finance this. But one's got to decide really what is one's objectives, because depending on your objectives, you can have a very different solution that will cost a very different amount of money. So, for example, if your objective in your home, if you're running a home business and your real objective is continuity of supply, you don't worry about saving the money or the monthly cost of electricity. You just want to continue your business regardless of load shedding. There are some really low-cost solutions, just a battery solution with an inverter. And depending on the nature of your office environment, you can be talking about less than 15,000 Rand. Okay, to be able to have business continuity. If, on the other hand, you are trying to reduce your electricity bill, you're going to need, solar PV and battery storage to cover some of the more energy-intensive appliances in your house, including your electric geyser, your stove, and others. You may also think about moving, your stove to gas, and you putting in solar hot water geysers, etc. But the bottom line is, if you want to save your electricity bill, you're going to have to reduce your electricity consumption. And to do that, you're going to have to put in a PV system and a battery. That could cost you 250,000 Rand or 200,000 Rand, in that kind of region. And most people can't afford that. So It really depends on one's own circumstances, what one's trying to achieve. Or are you living in Cape Town and you want to generate power into the grid and make some money as a what we call a prosumer? That would require a much bigger installation. In other words, you need to have a surplus to your own needs to generate into the grid. Okay, that's a different strategy. So it depends on what you're trying to achieve. But but if you simply want the lights to stay on, I mean, you can do what I do. I've got a battery light here.
So Chris, I want to ask, what do you have in your home?
I've got a battery and an inverter. I don't have a solar PV system at the moment, but I'm planning to put it in. But I have a battery and inverter that sees me through load shedding easily through load shedding, because my actual electricity demand is not high in terms of my essential load is not high. I don't need a big system. But I'm not saving on my electricity bill at all. In fact, I'm paying more on my electricity bill because a battery inverter system is not 100% efficient. So it actually uses more electricity than it ever puts out. So by having a battery system and inverter, you're actually using more electricity. So it's actually costing you a little bit more. You're not saving on electricity. But I am planning to put in a bigger system with solar PV. I just got to find the money.
Well, Chris, while you wander on the beach on holiday, maybe you should take a metal detector and see what you can pick up on the beach there. Thank you so much for your time this evening. So appreciated. We're going to go on and look at some of those solutions now, but you've been so enormously generous with your time and giving good advice to really the thousands of people who are watching us across all platforms this evening. So a huge thank you, Chris. Really much appreciated. You'll see from the chat, Anthony Altbecker had questions for you. There are lots of people with additional questions that we haven't yet managed to get to, unfortunately. But Chris, really, really appreciate the fact that you came on tonight.
Thank you. All the best. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys. And Larry, if we can ask you to turn on your camera, because we're going to talk about some of those solutions right now. Herschel, what did you think?
Listen, I thought it was probably more optimistic than most people think. And once again, you've got to, if you have the facts at your disposal and kind of you're able to defog what you read, it probably sounds a little better than most people anticipated. What was most surprising actually was what he spoke about, the maintenance relative to demand in summer or winter. I think most people probably thought it was the other way around, but I thought it was more positive.
Yeah, I agree. So Gideon, let's start at the beginning. Let's say I have very little money and I need to cope with winter. It's going to be up and down. There'll be some load shedding, maybe not stage 6, or maybe we'll be on stage 6 and then down to 3 again. Or maybe we live in Cape Town and we'll only be on stage 1. What's the most basic thing that we should have for us in order to survive a winter?
So how I'll describe it, Howie, is it's starting at the beginning. Is you can have a magneto flashlight or a switched flashlight, and that can see with your lighting. You can then get a Kadak or a little Bunsen burner, and you can do your essential cooking, and you can get by. Then I'll break it into a few different categories. The first and most essential is everyone says, I need internet. Because I think internet is now more important.
Before we even come on to that, I mean, heat and light are probably the two most important.
Yeah, so heat.
So let's talk about gas, because a lot of people would go and they would get a gas canister and a gas heater for heat, and that you can use during load shedding. Correct?
Yeah, of course. Correct.
And you can get a gas plate and attach it to your gas canister as well.
Yes, you get those from any hardware store, any major retailer. It doesn't have to be installed, and I'm saying you don't have to go spend 15,000 Rand or 40,000 Rand getting a SMEG gas stove. You can get a 2-plate a portable Bunsen burner like people take on a camping trip, and you can cook your food that way. To heat, you can get a normal gas heater with a Kadak gas bottle.
So I want to talk about my home, if I can use for an example, because I've got a gas hob. So I can cook. I've got gas heaters that require electricity, but not very much electricity, because the heat comes from actual gas, but you can get just a pure gas heater yourself. And prior to having installed some additional stuff, I had battery operated lights. In fact, I had many of these globes that come with a battery in that you can pick up. I think they're about 130 Rand, and you can screw them in to your light fittings. And when the electricity goes off, they stay on for another few hours. I mean, that's a relatively cheap way to actually survive with the very basics, just a little bit of light, a little bit of heat. Larry, would you agree with that? That's kind of entry level.
I mean, I've gone back to got a house in Sydenham with a fireplace. I've gone back to wood burning my fireplace. Gives a wonderful ambience to the house. It warms up the room very efficiently. And the cost of a bag of wood, if you're prepared to drive out to the city, you can get a bag of wood for 10 Rand. So it's another way of enjoying your home and using the environment to make yourself comfortable.
Well, one of our sponsors tonight is, in fact, High Speed Gas, who I personally use in my home, and they come and deliver these really big canisters to me. And that means I always have heat and I always can cook. And I want to show you just a very quick video from High Speed Gas, because it certainly works for me, and I think it should work for a lot of people. And whenever you actually need some additional facilities. So that's High Speed Gas. I use them. I would definitely strongly recommend it, whether you have a small canister or you have large canisters delivered. I think that's your entry level into this market if you're not going for wood. And
just back to the gas, I did an interesting experiment. I wanted to see what the cost saving was before going and investing in gas hobs. So I bought one of those 2-plate stoves. It was 450 or 500 Rand, and a gas cylinder, 5 kg. That 5 kg cylinder costs me 150 Rand to fill, and using just gas, so we've stopped using our electric hob for cooking, it's costing us 150 Rand over 6 weeks. So it's a very cost-effective way of saving electricity, never mind surviving load shedding.
Yeah, absolutely. So Gideon, you're now saying if that's our entry level, there are other essentials in life besides for some heat and some light. And you were saying our next essential is, in fact, internet.
Yeah, I think internet has become almost more important to people than their food. So for very you get these things called a DC UPS, a Wi-Fi UPS. Again, you can purchase them from all the major retailers. And essentially, this is you connect it to your router and to your ONT. And this.
Sorry, I don't know what an ONT is. Speak English to me.
Howie, you are a good presenter. You dumb things down for the audience. So an ONT is essentially your fiber box that comes with your with your house. Well, not with your house.
So,
it's the fiber
so
box
just to describe, it's a little battery that you'll plug your internet router into and your fiber router into it. How much does something like that cost? And give us some brand names that people should look out for if they go into Takealot or GWiz or one of those. What brands should they look for, and more or less how much should they pay?
So the brands that are popular, obviously, there's Gizu, there's Lalela, there's
Lalela's in fact you, is it not? That's your brand.
Yes, you're correct.
And there's Switch. There's Switch as well.
Switch. Yeah. There are a lot of these that have now come onto the market. Obviously, as you were discussing at the beginning, a lot of people have seen opportunity and seeked and jumped on the bandwagon. I think the most important thing here to note when buying one is 99% of these are lithium, so not to worry about these Wi-Fi UPSs. But the most important thing is actually the battery capacity. Is you get the cheaper ones that come with 8,800 milliamp hours. That is just doesn't cut it when you hit that stage 5, 6, 7, 8 of load shedding of that 4-hour stint. It just doesn't make it. So if you are going to invest, it's not a significant amount more, maybe an extra 30% more, but rather go for one that's got at least 13,000 milliamp hours, which will then ensure that you make it through the full 4-hour session of load shedding.
And how
but
much
it's-
how much should we pay for this? If I just want to keep my internet up and running, how much should I pay for one of these batteries that will last me 4 hours?
you should pay about $1,400. Any major retailer online, and this will then. And how it works is that it's basically like a UPS. As soon as you leave it plugged in, as soon as there's load shedding, it automatically senses that there's a voltage drop, and then it basically changes over straight to battery power and powers up and keeps your internet up and running.
So it's just for internet. It's not for my computer and a ring light and my TV. That's just keeping the internet up, and I must use my cell phone. Can I charge my cell phone off that, or will that use up too much power?
Yeah, a lot of these do come with a USB port, but again, I wouldn't recommend it because then you're eating into that same battery pack, which is supposed to be keeping your internet up and running. So then, yeah, then you can. Another big thing that everyone's kind of realized is WhatsApp. When there's load shedding, basically the towers go down, especially in the 4-hour session. A lot of these are battery backup, but they don't have enough time. So what's important is if you have internet, you then can basically use WhatsApp, because WhatsApp obviously uses the data network, and you can connect through obviously through the internet to that, and you don't have to go through your telecom, your cell phone towers. So yeah,
so
and then
what's one step up from that? If I want more than just my internet up, what's kind of the next phase?
So the next step, I say this is, then the next step is, all right, you want to keep your laptop up and running. Then you can get for example, you got a home business, or you're working from home, or you're a remote worker. So now you've got your internet up and running, and your laptop, and I'm saying maybe only going to last you about an hour and a half of battery, and I'm saying assuming it's 2-3 years into its life. You then can get a laptop power bank, which is essentially a power bank for your phone, except it's obviously been configured for your to the right voltages, etc., and adapters, and that will keep your laptop up and running for an additional 2.5 to 5 hours, obviously depending on the capacity of it. So
how much would I pay for that? So if I want to keep my computer, my laptop running, what do I ask for when I go on to Takealot? What do I call that? A laptop battery pack?
Laptop power bank.
A laptop power bank?
Except for your laptop.
And how much?
They start at about $1,700, and can go up obviously to 3,500-4,000 rand. But if you spend an entry level one, that will give you about another 2.5 to 3 hours on your laptop, plus at least an hour on your existing laptop, the internal battery, and then you've made it through your 4-hour load shedding.
So in fact, Gideon, you put a little slide together for us, and I just want to take people to that slide. So you'll see you first spoke about a Wi-Fi UPS, about 1,399 rand if you just want to keep your Wi-Fi up and running. If you want a laptop power bank that will keep your laptop 2.5 to 5 hours, you're looking at, for an entry level about 1,800 rand to about 2,000 to 3,000 rand. Give us once again some of the brands that people should look out for if they go on to Takealot or GWiz or one of the other online shops.
There's a Lalela, there's a Vizia, there's RCT. Those are obviously the major brands in the laptop power bank.
Just go slowly. Repeat the brands again slowly for people.
There's Lalela, there's Vizia, there's RCT.
Okay, cool. So now, Larry, the next thing people keep on asking, they want their TV and their DSTV on. Like, what's the next level?
So the next level from there would be some form of trolley inverter. And then suddenly your options get very big and confusing. But yeah, you can get trolley inverters start from about 700 watt. They go up to 2.5 kilowatt. So to keep your DSTV up, decoder, maybe your laptop, a light, a good suggestion would be something like a 2.5 kilowatt trolley inverter. And again, depending on your battery options, the question is how long you'll last.
Okay, well, come on to batteries in a second, but Hirsch, kilowatts terrify me because I don't quite know what we're talking about. So
yeah,
if I want my TV, my DSTV decoder, and maybe an LED ring light and to plug in my laptop, you say I must go for a 2.5 kilowatt, and that will keep me up for how many hours?
Also, sorry, let me rephrase. So 2.5 kVA. Probably, were they new? They could probably go for about 4 hours. Generally, the entry-level ones that you buy do age quickly, especially when there's a lot of load shedding. But they start at about 4 hours, and they do reduce in time. Yeah.
So
what is it? What is
Sorry,
it typically?
can I interject there?
no, you can't. Herschel first, and then get on.
Larry, what does it typically cost to install? So that needs to be then routed through your DV.
No. It's a trolley inverter. You buy it from your hardware store or your retailer. You wheel it in and you plug in an extension cord.
So it's a trolley because it's on wheels. So I can actually wheel it to my TV, wheel it back into my bedroom if I want it. It's almost like a portable wheelie, but they're quite heavy things. And they have multiple plugs in, so I can plug things into the back. Is that correct?
Correct.
Get on, you were saying?
Yeah, so I just want to say, I disagree for a trolley that you need a 2.5 kVA. I think that's a bit overkill from an inverter size. The reason being that a TV, internet, DSTV, you're probably looking at 150 to 250 watts, which essentially means from an inverter size, you only really need a 300 watt. And I'm saying obviously that they come in 600 watt to 1 kVA. So I don't think you necessarily need to over spec the actual inverter. What I think is more important is it's actually the batteries. Exactly what Larry mentioned is historically these trolleys were lead acid based, which is obviously the old technology. And I was quoted in the Jewish report. Everyone's loving it. I said lead is dead and gel from hell, because essentially exactly what Larry said. These things degrade too fast. They were designed as a backup power solution with the lead acid batteries, and a lead acid battery is rated at 150 to 250 cycles. If we are going through stage 6 load shedding.
Sorry, I'm going to dumb it down again. Let's start. We're trying to help people here, not give them jargon. There are 3 different types of batteries. You get a lead acid battery, you get a gel battery, and you get a lithium ion battery, and there's some advances after that, but those are really the 3 in the market. What you're saying is a lead acid battery, which is similar to the battery you'd find in your car, won't last you very long, because we're going through multiple cycles of load shedding, and they're going down and up, and it just doesn't last you very long. A gel battery has the same problem.
Yes, the gel is slightly better, but on paper it's better. It's not, in reality, it performs almost as badly.
But so what you're saying is if you're buying a trolley inverter, the only battery you should go for at this point in time is a lithium ion battery. But on the downside, lithium ion batteries are much more expensive.
Yeah. I would go with a smaller trolley, like Gidon says. A smaller trolley with a lithium battery will hold you in far better stead than more power with a lead acid or a gel. So
let's actually just look at that costing that you spoke about here. So you said they start from about 1,000 Rand to about 1,400 Rand. Will we be able to get a trolley inverter with a proper lithium ion battery in for that price?
Yes. So in the market, yeah. So I mean, the main driver, obviously, of these lithium inverters is the battery. The battery is the most, and I'm saying the lithium is the most expensive part of it. So that's going to be the main defining cost driver of it. So you can get them on the market for 9,000-10,000 Rand, but obviously that's going to be your entry level one. And then obviously going up to about 14,000 Rand for it. And obviously there's variances in between.
So, Larry, I have a technical question for you. What on earth is the difference between an inverter and a battery?
The battery is what stores your energy. The inverter is what turns that stored energy into electricity.
So I can't just have a battery, because someone asked a little earlier, can't they take kind of a car battery and plug their TV into a car battery?
Well, if your TV works off whatever the voltage of the battery is, if it's a 12-volt battery and your TV can run off 12 volts, then you can connect your TV straight to it. But classically, TVs need to be plugged into a mains supply. So the right answer to the question is probably no.
So you have a storage device, which is called the battery,
Yeah.
and something that manages your power, and that's called an inverter.
Correct.
And in a trolley, you have both batteries and an inverter.
Correct. The trolley is just an easy
power
swap.
bank. In a power bank for a TV, it's kind of a battery that's just specifically made at a specific voltage for your phone or your laptop.
Correct. Well, in basic terms, yes, correct. Correct.
So Joseph wants to know about, is there fire danger with lithium-ion batteries?
No, there isn't. The lithium batteries that you buy all have what they call a BMS, which is a battery management system. The only way there would be a fire risk is if Joseph decided to take the battery out of his inverter and open it up and fiddle around inside. But the batteries are generally sealed, and they've passed all sorts of safety tests, and you have nothing to worry about.
So now, Gideon, you described all of these items: the trolley inverter, the power banks, for either your phone, your internet, or your computer. Those are uninstalled devices. Is that correct?
Yes, these are all plug and play, off the shelf devices. You buy it from Takealot or from Builder's Warehouse, Incredible Connection. You bring it home and you just plug it and it works.
So Takealot, Incredible Connection. Give us some brands as well that people should look out for.
So on the lithium side, there's the Lalela range, which is ours. There's not so much in the lithium space of inverters. Mesa, Mustex, and Mesa have got one as well on the market, but the market has historically been lead acid based. So there are not that many brands. Obviously, I'm assuming within the next 6-12 months, where everyone is kind of following where the technology is going, you'll see a lot more of these on the market.
So we have Switch from Volcano as one of our sponsors tonight. I want to show you a quick video about Switch, and then we're going to come back and answer some of these questions, and then move on to the issue that I think many people are interested about on the installed devices. So Hirsch, tell us what you have on your home.
How we started off with the torches and the fireplace, and then we progressed to a 5 kVA generator, a small diesel one. The bonus was it turned on automatically, and just also powered the basics. Television, you want some light, you want some television, you want some Wi-Fi. Admittedly, it did power my treadmill. But one thing
I think that's important. An important thing. Like you put in a diesel generator, is that right?
Yeah.
And that worked for you? Probably a little noisy.
Yeah, a little noisy, and it's dirty, and you've got to replace you've got to top up with diesel continuously, and as the load shedding got up, and this was a small generator that just powered some basics and 1 or 2 plugs in the house. We started, we're spending 3,000 to 4,000 rand a month just on diesel with a small 5 kVA generator, and then we've made the transition to solar, and it was actually an interesting discussion because I think what Chris mentioned earlier, are you trying to just kind of alleviate the pain of load shedding, and a generator is dirty energy, or are you really trying to save electricity? So we don't really notice that there's load shedding with a solar solution and a battery and an inverter. It doesn't power the house fully, so our stoves are off and our geysers are off, and that's potentially the next stage. But it does take away some of the stress of load shedding. It's a much cleaner form of energy. but I'm not sure that, I think the payoff from what we've seen is, and what we spent on the solution, and then there's the whole discussion about renting and buying, which I'm sure some of your other guests are going to talk about. But I think the payoff is marginal. I think as Larry said, if you want to save on electricity, you've got to reduce your electricity usage. That's when you get real savings, not really on the solar versus Eskom.
So, I mean, Larry, get on for someone's home. Is a diesel generator really dead? Has that really been replaced by inverter and battery, or inverter, battery, and solar panel, or are there still people installing diesel generators?
There's still people using generators. You can hear them humming at night.
Yeah.
A lot of people who are not sure, who don't necessarily. Let's put it this way: a little petrol generator, 7 kVA generator, which is enough to generate and manage all your essentials, costs you 16,000 Rand. Okay, the fuel maybe costs you a few $100 a week, but putting in a proper inverter with lithium batteries and solar is going to cost you 150, 160, 200,000 Rand. So there are people who are not confident or comfortable with making that move yet. So
Herschel told us that on his generator, he was using his treadmill, which I think is a major thing in Herschel's life. And that's really important. Helen is asking us about fridges. Do fridges use a lot of electricity? What are the things in our home that actually eat up the electricity? Larry?
So,
No, go, get on.
No, Larry, listen to me. Don't be polite.
Okay. Yeah, fridges are a difficult one to say. Fridges generally don't use a lot of electricity, but fridges are difficult things to have on backup power supplies. We can get into the details later. What uses a lot of electricity are your geysers, heaters, stoves, ovens. So anything that generates heat, kettles. So anything that generates heat uses electricity. Today, I wouldn't say most of us, but you can't buy a non-LED light bulb today. You can't buy incandescent light bulbs, but so lighting generally uses very little electricity. Your computers are become quite energy efficient. Your TVs are energy efficient. So your big heaters are definitely anything that produces heat.
So does it surprise you that Herschel was running on his treadmill?
No.
Because the treadmill clearly doesn't use a lot of electricity.
No, Herschel was the one producing heat, not his treadmill.
and Tony wants to know pool pumps.
I suppose it depends on the pool pump. Again, the newer pumps today, you get pool pumps at 500 watts, 750 watt, which is relatively low. If you've got an older pool pump, they were sitting at 1500 watts, 2000 watts. So again, it's a difficult one to answer. Depends on the technology that you have.
Get on. If we would move on, because almost people at this point in time, everyone's talking about solar. But let's understand there are almost 3 components. The first component is an inverter, and we've spoken about inverters. That's what manages your electricity, and batteries. But to have an inverter and a battery, even installed in your home, you don't actually need solar panels at all, do you?
100%, definitely not. So again, exactly, just to, paraphrase what Chris Yelland said, and whenever anyone asks me what do I need and how, I think we had a coffee, and I said the same thing to you. I said, what problem are you trying to solve? What is your pain point? If you're just trying to stop load shedding, you don't need solar, right? All you need is an inverter and a battery, lithium, but that's all you need. And it's significantly cheaper than going the full solar route. If you say, well, I don't want to just stop load shedding because after load shedding, the substation blew and then there was no power for the next day. Well, that's something different. Then you're saying, well, I actually want extended power and almost be not off the grid, but you want to be less reliant on Eskom and be able to not let Eskom get in your way. Then you need solar. And then the other reason for solar is obviously if you want to start reducing your electricity bill. So
just tell me, let us say I have a little house or I'm in a flat and I want to keep the lights on, so I need a battery. I need a small little battery, I presume. Well, not so small. I need something that can keep everything except my oven, my heater, my geyser on. What do I need? Like, I need a battery and I need an inverter. How much?
So I would say I'll categorize into a small category. So it's I call it a flat or a townhouse. If you, I would say you need you can get with a 3 kVA inverter and a 2.5 kilowatt hour battery. You're looking fully installed between 30 to 40,000 rand.
So a small home, an apartment, 30, 40,000 rand, battery inverter, I'm sorted. Let's say I'm in a townhouse and I need a little more and I've got kids running around the place. What's the next step up from that?
So I'd say the next step up, so let's just call it a small to medium house. Again, it can go into a townhouse as well. But I would say then you need a 5 kVA inverter. So, and then basically go for a 5 kilowatt hour battery. And again, getting that installed into your DB board. I mean, I think that's what Chris Yelland said he had. And the cost for that installed should be around 60 to 70,000 rand fully installed.
And let us say,
and again,
sorry.
The most important thing is to ensure that you're going for lithium batteries, nothing but lithium batteries.
And Larry, let us say I want everything on. I want my stove to work. I want my geyser to work. I want the heaters to work. How much am I going to pay for my home if that's what I want?
Well, how it all depends on the size of your home. I went into a home in Glen Hazel last week. The guy had three inverters and he had 80 kilowatts of battery. There were 2 batteries. I'm 6'2". There were 2 batteries, stacks of batteries as tall as I was. And he had 60 panels on his roof, but he spent 800,000 rand on the solution. So, you know, he's got 5 geysers, he's got a massive house. But I would say the average Glen Hazel Sydenham house, probably a 5 or 8 kVA system, should hold you through load shedding with 2 batteries. I don't want to quote on pricing, but without panels, you're probably looking also 80 to 100,000 rand for an 8 kVA and 2 batteries.
But Larry, that's not going to power your stove.
No, it will. An 8 kVA inverter, you can power a stove, you can power an oven. You obviously can't power it all at the same time. You have to choose what it is, but you can on an 8 kVA quite comfortably. Again, it depends also on how much battery you have, how long it will sustain you.
So Larry, there's some people who've asked questions. Electric gates and alarms. I mean, that doesn't take a lot of electricity, surely.
Not at all.
What about microwave ovens?
A microwave oven uses about 1,000 watts. So
is that a lot or a little?
Medium.
But chances are your microwave is on for 2 or 3 minutes. It's not going to be on for a few minutes
and then it's off again. Correct. Yeah. Correct.
Okay, I want to show you a quick video and then we'll be back and tell you a little more, because that's what we've just seen. 3 kVA backup batteries, 5 kVA backups, pricing 35 to 40,000 for a small apartment and about 60 to 70,000 for a smallish home. No solar involved in that at all. If you want to add solar now you need to put on panels, and we're now talking about 120,000 to 135,000. And the difference here is that not only do you have a battery to store the things, not only do you have an electricity supply control mechanism, your inverter, but now you can go and generate your own electricity from the sun. So if Eskom is out for days, you should at least get some electricity. That's the reason why you would get solar. And presumably during the day, you'll be able to accumulate electricity for your batteries during the day and spend less on Eskom. Get on?
Yeah, so the big misnomer is that people think you're going to put on solar and it's going to significantly reduce your electricity bill. So the answer is yes and no. Most people, unfortunately, it won't reduce the electricity bill. The reason being that residential houses use the majority of the electricity in the evening when the sun is not shining, which is the converse of obviously the commercial space where you use, like a shopping center uses electricity when the sun is shining. That's why solar works perfect there. If you really want to get the true benefit in electricity saving, you need to set your inverter to basically in the day charge the batteries, and then obviously power your house. And then in the evening, you actually have to run your batteries every single night, whether there's load shedding or not. The challenge with that is you then have to significantly increase the amount of batteries that you have, because you just have one battery and that's going to get you through 4 hours of load shedding. That's not going to get you through your whole evening. And then you're either going to have a blackout in your house when your battery's finished, or you're going to have to turn back to Eskom. So in order to really get the saving from solar, from a financial aspect, you need to start running those batteries every night, and you have to increase the size of your amount of batteries and the configurations on your inverter. But that being said, it's not so black and white. Obviously, you've got to take a view on what is the electricity increase going to be over the next 10 years, over the next while. I mean, we've seen, obviously, NERSA and Eskom, NERSA has approved a significant electricity increase. But how long is it going to last? I mean, I read in the Rater's book that it should revert back to inflationary sort of increases. I mean, whether that's true or not true, I don't know how they can sustain themselves with 500 billion rand worth of debt at Eskom, but that's essentially it.
Let's stick to the key thing of giving people advice. Larry, we're being told that we didn't handle batteries properly.
Yeah, I saw that. All right. So I think we didn't handle batteries properly. I think people are trying to say that the batteries only last a certain amount of time.
No, they're saying, like, tell us the difference between lead acid gel and lithium. Why should you only go for lithium?
Okay. The basic difference is the structure of the battery. I'm not going to get into chemistry, but
don't care. Just tell us why.
Okay. A lead acid battery, without damaging the battery, you can only draw it up to about 70, well, they call it state of charge. So the amount of, if you can imagine a glass of water full to the brim, that's your battery charged at 100%. For a gel battery to not actually damage or degrade, you can only drink up to 70%. You've got to leave 70% of the water in your glass before you fill it up again. Gel, you can maybe go a little bit lower, but where gel's challenge is to fill up the glass, you've got to fill up the glass a lot slower than you would a lead acid battery. And those are the challenges. The chargers built into the inverters generally don't regulate the charging, so gel batteries get damaged quickly. Where lithium state of charge, you can drink your water all the way down and leave up to 20 or 10% of water at the bottom of the glass, and then you can super fill up the glass again at a much faster speed than you can your gel acid and your gel and your lead acid. I mean, does that explain the analogy in any way?
I think it does, and I want to do this really quickly because if someone else says, what happens if it rains for a week and you've got solar?
I was actually going to wait for Alon to finish, and I was going to bring that up. So solars, there's definitely benefits and there's electrical savings, but I've got a solar system on the house. The last few weeks of summer, it rained constantly for 2 weeks. We also had stage 6 load shedding at that point, and we had substations tripping. So we sometimes didn't have electricity for 8 hours. After 4 hours, we were done. We had no electricity. I went back to my petrol generator, turned it on, and started powering the house with the generator.
Let me just add to that. What Gilon's point is that actually, so what we do, and we certainly don't have 6'5" stacks of batteries and 40 panels, but is that you have to set your system so that at night time the battery supplements from Eskom, because otherwise you're not going to get through the night an extended period of load shedding and then into the night where the batteries, and that does cut into your savings. So and that, it's not a foolproof solution, and so you have to just find the balance, unless you're going for top end, between drawing some from the grid, being very selective about which appliances you're using when, especially at night.
Yeah.
That would be your stove, and then obviously during the day you're getting the benefits. I want to just ask another question, either to Larry or Gilon. So often read about what products to choose, and they talk about tier 1. They use this terminology around, when you're choosing your battery or your inverter or your panels, make sure that your supplier is giving you tier 1 products. What are tier 1 products?
Sure.
I presume that means good brands.
Yeah. So, I don't know what. Yeah. Sorry.
So, go ahead.
The only thing I can think of where they're referring to tier one is the battery market, and the lithium battery market in particular is flooded at the moment with a lot of brands and a lot of options. What a lot of guys are doing, a lot of South African companies are doing, are they're bringing in what they call second life batteries. So they're batteries that have been pulled out of electric vehicles in Europe or States or China, wherever it is, and the cells are cleaned up, they're brought here and they're assembled in a new box with a new battery management system, and they're sold as a backup battery for your house. Tier one, I'm assuming that they're referring to batteries with new cells that are completely new from from the factory, that haven't been used before.
So how do you know what to ask for? So when your solar supplier presents you with this brand or this brand, how do you as a layman know what to compare or what to ask?
So from a panel, I'll just talk panels. So my knowledge is there's the tier one panels. There's obviously some specification. I think it's in China, wherever how they grade them. The three main brands on the panels is Canadian Solar, which is actually a Chinese company, but it's called Canadian Solar. Then there's JA and there's Jinko. Those are pretty much the three main tier one brands from a panel perspective.
Give us the trusted brands in, for example, inverters.
From inverters, I'd say I'll just classify it into three main categories. There's the Rolls-Royce, which is Victron, which is the top of the market. Then I'd call it the second tier, which is actually become the flavor of the month in South Africa, which is the SunSync and the Daya. Those are pretty much the flavor of the month. And then I would say you get I call it my brand, and other brands is call it the Toyota Corolla of inverters, which is affordable, strong, and reliable. So you get those the Mesa, you get the RCT, you get the Codex, you get obviously the Lelela. There's a whole other range of inverters in that bucket.
So I want to move us on because we still got a lot to cover tonight, and I want to talk about quickly, do you rent or do you buy, in a second. But before we do it, I want to watch a quick video from Go Solar.
Want to erase the darkness? Lighten up. Go Solar brings sunshine into your life. With solar panels on your roof and a smart inverter and battery in your home, every day the sun will rise, shining on your solar panels, generating cost-effective, sustainable energy. Excess energy produced keeps charging the battery, giving you energy at night and during load shedding. How long does your battery last? It depends on how much power you use and how many batteries you have. But you're good for at least 2.5 hours of load shedding. And when there's no power, your essentials are backed up. Lights, plugs, Wi-Fi, TV, fridge, alarm. The inverter is your system's brain, directing where the energy goes. Even on cloudy days, rainy days, and those long nights, you're never in the dark. If your solar panels and battery don't cover your needs, you're still connected to the grid. So choose the system that suits your home and the plan that suits your budget. As long as there's a sun in the sky and Go Solar, you'll always have sunshine in your life. Here comes the sun. Go Solar.
So in fact, solar systems are very expensive to put in, but you can rent them as well. So for example, my office, which I work from home, I pay about 1,740 Rand a month, and that powers all my lights, all my computers, my lighting, my internet, my television when I need it, for about 1,740 through Go Solar. And I'm going to ask at this point in time, I'm going to ask Adrian to put on his camera as well and join us. But Larry, you've looked at, do you rent or do you buy?
So, I mean, I can give you the pros and cons of both. So basically, the advantage of buying a system means you've got to have some sort of capital. You've either got to finance it through your bond, take finance, or have the cash under your mattress or whatever it is. You've got to buy the system. You've also have to then maintain the system. So if something goes wrong, if there's a problem with one of the components, it's your responsibility to either have a warranty claim or pay for the component to be fixed. Also the components do age. So even if nothing goes wrong, at some point you're going to have to upgrade. So those are really the downsides to buying. The upside is that it's your system. You can do what you want. You can program how you want. You can play how you want. Rental, which is what I chose to do. I don't have the cash, but I did the maths for myself, and I went for the same system you go for, 1,700 Rand a month, and I don't worry about a thing. The company that installed it, they covered all the costs, they covered all the outlays, and they cover the maintenance. If there are any problems, I pick up the phone, and they come through and deal with it. There's obviously a term to the rental. It's got to be suitable for the person who rents it and for the person who rents it out. And if I do choose to remove the system, within a short period of time, I do have to pay a fairly large penalty. But that's I'm not planning to take it out. I'm planning to stick with the system for as long as possible. So those are the pros and cons. I think rental, in my opinion, it's a no-brainer in many ways.
So Roz, who's busy watching us this evening, says she lives on the 4th floor of an apartment building and the lifts aren't connected to anything, but there's no reason why the lifts should not be connected. Is that correct?
No, buildings are complicated.
Buildings are complicated, but if they put in inverter panels to drive the elevator, surely that could work.
They can, yes. There are buildings that have so very successfully put in solar systems to manage their common areas, their lifts, their passage lights, etc.
Well, that's why I wanted to speak to Adrian, because Adrian, you're from Hooray Power, and you've got this really interesting model whereby you actually go into townhouse complexes and you provide power to the entire townhouse complex, not just emergency power, but you almost take over from Eskom as the electricity supplier. You do that in factories, you do that in townhouse complexes, you do it in apartment buildings. Explain to us what Hooray Power is doing.
So we've taken a very different approach to this problem that faces everybody. Now, there's certain legislative limitations to normal households, freestanding properties, but these same limitations are not applied to sectional title developments, in the sense that these 60 or 80 or 100 properties all share a single electrical connection. So in a normal suburb, you can't have a generator that's, as an example, a very big unit that's then powering 10 or 20 homes. However, you can do exactly that in the sectional title development. So when we put these large-scale centralized industrial systems in, we're able to achieve a price point that's about 1/3 that of had you wanted a standalone individual system in every apartment that was able to run your geyser, your stove, your oven, everything. There aren't any essentials and non-essentials. And this would include all the common areas, the lifts, the security systems. The entire building continues like normal when there's load shedding, and it's seamless. So this is a proper industrial system, and it's truly amazing to see what can be done.
So talk about cost. Does it cost more than Eskom Power, the same as Eskom Power? What are the costs associated? But you will guarantee the power.
Yeah. So we can look. There's nothing's for free. I mean, from the most basicest of solutions of having a hot water bottle and a candle, those things cost money, all the way up to this most sophisticated solution where you've got batteries that are standing taller than a man that's 6'2", and you can stack multiples of these together and you can do all sorts of things. However, the solution that we put in place is a lot more cost effective than if everybody went their own way. If some houses put their own inverter system in essentials, other houses put in nothing, maybe some properties put in something that backed up everything. Collectively, it's vastly cheaper. We're coming in at about 1/3 of the cost had everybody put in their own individual systems, and that's excluding the cost that would have been required to then go and put in something for the common areas. And because you're now contracting with the body corporate, which is a legal entity, you can now take advantage of a lot of these renewable energy funds that would typically only be able to contract with commercial or industrial users. So suddenly you have access to all of these additional benefits. And by being able to rent these systems, and I mean, you alluded to this point earlier that renting becomes a no-brainer, especially in the residential application. The body corporates don't have an income tax liability, something that they can actually write off these tax burdens against. So by renting the system, their indirect cost of ownership can actually go down, because had they gone and bought it, there is no means for them to go and claim that benefit.
So
there are a few mechanisms.
Judy's asking a question. Is this available in Cape Town as well for buildings in Cape Town, or only Johannesburg?
We are looking to expand to Durban and Cape Town. We've had a surprisingly high number of inquiries from those places. It's not something that we're doing immediately, but definitely something we'll be doing in the next 6 to 12 months.
I want to show your video quickly because I think it's got some beautiful imagery of kind of the sort of installations that you've done. So let's just very quickly look at that, and people will understand exactly the sort of thing that you've put together.
Thank you.
So, Adrian, if you're in a townhouse complex or if you're in an apartment block, this is probably a fantastic solution for you. Does it work in factories as well?
Yes, we have done a few commercial and industrial installations. The one that excites me the most is probably we've backed up a car dealership that sells a lot of electric cars, and they needed a means of fast charging the electric cars during load shedding. So we've done a system for them. Done a system for a super spa. Their diesel bill went from 340,000 Rand a month to 0. I mean, it's some months. So it's actually fantastic to see how well it can work in a wide variety of applications, not just in the residential, but in commercial and industrial as well.
So I'm going to ask Dylan to put up a poll now. If you're watching us on Zoom and you would like Hooray Power to contact you because you're in an apartment building or you're in a block of flats or a townhouse complex, and just explain, you come and you make use of people's roofs. So you'll use the top of the block of flats, you'll use people's roofs in a townhouse complex, and that's where you would put your panels.
Correct. So it's slightly different to a residential application where the panels are almost like a novelty because of the sheer scale at which we're installing. I mean, you saw on some of those photos, we're putting hundreds and hundreds of panels onto these estates, and we are then able to achieve a much lower price point. So it's actually a massive cost-saving benefit. So it is very cost-effective for the homeowners, and to the point where the savings from the solar system are actually able to subsidize a large portion or the majority of the cost of the battery in some cases, where the homeowners are maybe only paying in a couple hundred Rand a month, as opposed to a lot more had they gotten their own individual system.
So you'll be happy to know that 17 people watching this evening have asked Hooray Power to contact them. We'll provide the details to you tomorrow. Adrian, thank you so much for joining us, because we're going to go on now and talk about how you actually make money out of this crisis and this opportunity. So Larry and Gideon, I'm going to ask you to turn off your cameras, and I'm going to welcome our next panelists. So Jeff, if you can turn on your camera, and Jonty, if you can turn on your camera. And Jonty, I'm going to start by quickly showing your video, and then we're going to talk to you and Jeff about Grovest and Geltec's opportunities, because there are great tax savings and tax advantages that people really can use in order to make some money out of this crisis. Let's start with our first video, which is from Geltec. Jeff, I think maybe I'm going to show your video next, and so guys, we refer to it as Section 12B of the Income Tax Act because that's the incentive that we're all given to invest in renewable energy. So, Jonty, let's start with you. How do we make money out of this crisis?
Well, how we fortunately, similar to Section 12J, which I'm sure many of your listeners are aware of, Section 12B is a tax incentive. And if you invest into a Section 12B fund or partnership, as an investor, you get a really significant tax benefit. Section 12J gave you 100% tax deduction, which was generous. Section 12B is enhanced. You get 125% tax deduction. So just by investing into a Section 12B fund, if you're in the highest tax bracket, if you invest R1 million, you can get a refund or a tax saving from SARS of around 560,000 Rand. So just from SARS, you're getting a nice return. Well, then your money is held in the fund, and the fund needs to invest it and acquire solar assets. And these assets generate really nice income for 10 or 15 years. And as an investor, you enjoy the income over the term. And I'm sure people will.
So let's actually just go through those figures again. Let us say, for example, I earn R1 million a year. And normally I would pay about 450,000 Rand of that in tax. But let us say I take my R1 million a year and I put it into a 12B fund. What happens?
Let me give you more accurate numbers. So if you earn R1 million, you're not in the highest tax bracket. So if you, let's say you earn 3 million Rand, and you would have paid tax at 45% from around anything above 1.8 million Rand. Okay. So if you earn 3 million, if you invest R1 million, your taxable income drops, but not by R1 million Rand, which would have happened in Section 12J. It'll drop by 1.25. So in other words, you'll only pay tax of around 1.75. As a result, the tax saving amounts to 560,000 Rand. So in other words, had you invested into the Section 12B fund, R1 million, you would then receive a refund if you're a PAYE payer of 560,000 Rand, 56% of your investment. Or if you're a provisional taxpayer, you'll pay 560,000 Rand less in tax. I hope I've made that clear.
So, I mean,
that's on the first year that's in the first year, despite the fund runs for however many years, but it's in that first year of the investment where you get that tax saving.
Exactly. Upfront, as long as, and this is a significant risk with these type of investments, as long as the fund manager invests your money before the end of February next year, and the asset produces electricity. If that happens, then you get the refund. If it doesn't happen, so let's say the fund manager raises too much money doesn't deploy the capital in time, then the investor will get a proportionate tax refund to what has actually been invested. So that's a key risk in this type of investment.
Jeff, this seems like an enormously attractive thing. Is it too good to be true?
I don't know if it's too good to be true, Howie, but it is. I think it's timeless. In fact, that there's a crisis, an energy crisis, and the government is looking for the private sector to invest into solar power, alternative energy sources, and as a result is giving these allowances. So as a result, in the 12B has been around since 2016, but now from the 1st of March 2023 till 28th of February 25, they've increased it to 125%. But I think what's important is that you've got this 2-year window. And as John T said, the risk is based on execution. And you have to take the funds raised and actually invest them into assets that will generate electricity before the end of 25, or obviously in February 24 if you want to have a matching investment. And I think that's the most important thing that I would recommend that the listeners actually take into consideration tonight, is that they must invest, if they invest in a 12B fund, that they must be sure that the people that they, the fund that they're investing in has the execution capacity to actually deploy that money into energy generating assets, but more importantly, as not into any generating or not using any EPC or engineering, procurement and construction company, but that because these systems have to last anywhere from between 10 and 20 years. Now, just in terms of the 12B Green Energy Fund, which we launched at the beginning of the year, is that we have a strategic partner in Hooray Energy, which you spoke to Adrian Erasmus, who's the CEO, who's been and together with Grovest and Hooray Power, we've been in the market for the last 4 years. So we've really learned our skill fees, and we understand the space very, very well.
So just let's use a practical example. I've given you my money. I've got the tax rebate back from the receiver of revenue, a very, very decent tax rebate back, but I'm still going to earn income off the electricity that's generated by these systems.
Absolutely right. So the funds that get invested into the 12B fund then get utilized to procure assets which are deployed to various projects. And you saw a whole lot of sectional title or commercial industrial projects in terms of the Hooray video and the Grovest video, where we then charge energy for the energy produced. And that would be at a lower tariff than they were currently paying to Eskom. But there obviously is a small premium to add to the battery, which is the energy storage, which is going to help you over the load shedding issues. Also, I mean, it's also going to help you over time, because you're not going to be, if you come off the grid, or a large portion of coming off the grid, you're not going to be exposed to the high escalations that NERSA is currently putting through. Now, someone else said earlier, that maybe that the increases will come down to normal inflationary level. I'm of the opinion that in my lifetime, I don't think that we will ever see single level increases again. I think that the debt and that the government has got into, they're going to have to put up electricity in double digits in order to repay it. And also that in real terms, South African energy is cheap compared to world standards. And on that basis, they're going to use these double digit increases going forward.
So, I mean, Jeff, almost as an investor, I actually don't care. I'm going to say, I'm going to give you R1 million and I'm going to get a tax rebate, and I'm going to get revenue from this. What are my returns going to look like?
So we're going to, in the 12B Green Energy Fund, is that we targeting an 18% IRR, net of fees and taxes. We are
explain this IRR things to people. What does that practically mean?
it's an internal rate of return. That means what is my return that I'm going to receive on my investment on a compounding basis. Now, most of the 12B funds, or all of the 12B funds in the market, are somewhere around 10 years. And you would then say, what is my return going to be if I make an investment today and I receive X amount of distributions each year, which will be, that's from the receipt of the generation of the electricity. And then at the end of the term of 10 years, what happens to the existing plant that is in place? And then you take, that's a financial calculation, and that would be the return that the investor actually will receive in their own hands.
So, yeah.
Just and John, just for this is green. We're talking about green renewable energy. So we're not talking about when investing in energy solutions. We're not talking about massive generator plants. This is solar renewable.
We're talking green. We're talking green energy, which could be wind, hydro, but the 12B Green Energy Fund focus solely on solar energy.
And then, Jonty, what happens at some point if you're able to sell surplus power back into the grid? Do the proceeds of that come back into the fund, or is that outside of the fund?
It all depends on the deal that's done with the end customer. So some 12B funds will enjoy that benefit. They'll be able to sell it into the grid and recoup some money. Unfortunately, in the residential space, at the moment, many of the meters turn back the dial as opposed to being able to actually receive or invoice Eskom for the amounts. But there is something else which is an option or potential option for investors to get another return, and that's the carbon credits. Carbon credits are tricky, but there's a potential uplift for investors because the investments which we're making, they're obviously green, and with them come credits.
Jonty, the two things that you're really looking for, is that correct? The one thing you're looking for is, you say, investors, you're about to close your second fund. You've had one fund that was fully subscribed. You've got a second fund that's nearly fully subscribed at the moment, but you need to deploy that capital in this year, and you need electricity to actually flow out of those installations this year in order to do that. So you're looking for both investors, and you're looking for people who would like to have solar put on their buildings or put on their factories or put on whatever facility they. And so we're going to run a poll for you as you talk us through. Explain to us what you're looking through, and we're going to run the Delta poll because you want, if you want to invest in a 12B fund, you're saying contact us. But if you also want us to come and install facilities on your building, on your apartment, etc., we're looking for those as well.
Yeah, so from our perspective, we are a fund manager. We're managing a lot of money in the 12B space. Most of it, we're hoping to be fully deployed by August, but we're always looking for really good opportunities. Within your community of the Jewish Report, there are a lot of really successful entrepreneurs who are considering solar, and we'd love to look at funding their solar installation. And for us, we think that's a big opportunity. We want to give our investors the cream of the crop. And we've already done that. We've got listed businesses that we're providing solutions to large property holding companies. So anyone who's looking to install a solar solution of more than 5 million Rand, we'd love to provide a competitive quote or funding arrangement to what they would have achieved from the banks. Our rates are really impressive in comparison to any of our competitors that we've seen in terms of pricing. We think we can beat them. What's really attractive of our funding is we'll obviously install the entire solar solution at our cost. So the full installation, the term is 10 or 15 years. The payment to us isn't based on NERSA or Eskom rates, which we think will continue to increase. It's based on prime plus percentage, depending on how creditworthy the end customer is. And when you take these factors into account and you compare it to what you're going to achieve from a bank, 7 or 8 year term, prime plus 2 or prime plus 3, our numbers really make financial sense for these property companies, these businesses. And we'd love, people within your community who are looking for solar to reach out to us, and we'd love to give them a competitive quote.
Fantastic. And Jeff, what are you looking for?
So in terms of deployment, in terms of pipeline, we have a full order book. We still currently raising money. We're doing them in tranches, our funds in tranches of 200 million. So we're currently deploying as we raise. So we are open for additional capital. The good news is that we're matching the deployment with the capital. To date, we have 7 projects in work at the moment. So that's actually, that will be generating, our first project will be generating electricity by the end of July. We're hoping by the end of the year, that was planned for the end of the year, that the full 200 million will be deployed into energy producing assets. And then we will obviously open our second fund. I think our first distribution from our fund will be in September this year, and then every 6 months thereafter. So there's 2 distributions of profit every single year. And we sign up 20-year PPA, our paper or power purchase agreements with our off-takers. Our escalation is at CPI plus 1 or 1.5, depending on the risk. And then what we have been in solar, like for the last 4 years, we've sold 2 portfolios to date of power purchase agreements of 200 million rand each. So we're very affay with actually accumulating the paper and then selling it into the aggregation market.
So we're going to pull up a poll for you as now. If you'd like to invest with the GrowVest 12B fund, we're pulling up that poll at the moment. How long is this investment for? Is it a long-term investment? Is it a short-term investment?
So the 12B Green Energy Fund is a 10-year investment. The fund is 10-year term, but unlike Section 12J, you don't have to hold it for 5 years in order to get any tax benefits. Over here, you can sell at any point in time. It is subject to the liquidity of the fund, but because the fund is fully deployed by the end of the year, there's lots and lots of cash, so it's unlikely that there will be any cash, constraints to actually to give people the money before the time. There will be a slight discount depending on when they did exit the fund, but I think most importantly, it's not like 12J where you're locked up for 5 years.
So what happens when you actually sell your shares in the fund?
You're a partner in a partnership. So you sell your partnership interest or you redeem your partnership interest, and there would be a recoupment of the value that you received. So anything up to the cost of your investment will be recouped at the tax rate, and anything above that will be subject to capital gains tax.
Okay, so ultimately you reverse your tax benefit at that point in time.
Well, it depends. I think there's a huge arbitrage. You're getting 125% in year 1, and if you sell in year 10, the equipment is worth probably 20 or 30%, plus the value of the future cash flows. So there's a huge windfall in year 10, notwithstanding that there's a recoupment. You probably, that's how you get to your 18% plus IRR.
If you sell and you get recouped, do you get recouped at 100% or at the 125%?
No, in the first 2 years, if you sell your investment within the first 2 years, so 12BA says that you will have to pay your recouped at 125%. But if you sell after the 2-year period, i.e. February 25, then you'll only be recouped at the 100% mark, based on the value of the assets or the cash that you received up to the amount you invested.
So, Jonty, tell us what else we should know before we close, because we've only got about 5 minutes before we have to close off tonight.
Yeah, I think something which was very attractive to our investors is debt in these type of funds. So, our fund is also a 10-year term, but what we do in the second year of investment is we raise a small amount of debt in the fund. Now, what this debt does is it allows us to buy additional solar equipment. Now, when you do that, what happens is the investors, they now own additional solar equipment without having put in any more money, and that gives them another tax benefit. So Our investors in year one, if you're in the highest bracket, you'll get around 560,000 Rand from SARS. In the following year, we raise some debt. You get another refund of 290,000. And in those 2 years, you also get cash flows from the investment. It generates income. Now, if you add up all those cash flows in our investment after year two, we look to return all our investors' money through the cash flows and through the refund. So really, they're getting their money out. So being able to apply a small amount of debt, not to increase the risk levels much in this type of investment, really puts an investor in a really favorable position where, although they've invested, they've gotten all their money back from a refund and from SARS. So any monies after year two is really just profit. So that's a nice way that we've seen a lot of interest in our funds from our investor base.
What are the minimum investments for in terms of both funds?
Our minimum investment is 250,000 Rand.
And yeah, so and our investment's 100,000 Rand.
And Jonty, your predicted IRR?
Ours is 24%. But what's also nice is during the investment term, we average of around 13% return in terms of cash flows to the investor. So every year, if you put in R1 million, we aim to return around 130,000 Rand. That increases over time. And then at the end, there's the balloon payment, because we then look to sell the asset to the end customer at around 20% of its value.
Jeff is talking about a 10-year investment. What is the period of your investment that you envisage?
Ours is also 10 years.
So we've got two interesting offerings on there. I'm going to ask Dylan to make sure that everyone's contact details are on. Jonty, should people be contacting you if they're interested in the Geltec offering?
Yeah, absolutely.
Give us an email address.
It's Jonty, Jonty, @geltec.co.za. But I'm sure Dylan will put it through on the messaging system.
And Jeff, are you the person that people should speak to at the 12B Green Energy Fund?
Happy to take all queries, questions, emails, calls. Jeff M at grovest.co.za.
Tell us how you...
Grovest.
I was going to ask people to spell Jeff as well, although it is on the screen in front of them, but are you with a G or a J?
A J, J-E-F-F.
J-E-F-F at grovest.com.
.co.za.
So co.za. Okay, and you've both raised substantial amounts of money in this. I mean, Jonty, you're closing your second fund. Jeff, you've raised hundreds of millions of rands as well.
Well, we passed our halfway mark in our first fund, which is a 200 million Rand fund, and so we passed the halfway mark where we are currently at the moment.
Hirsch, we're always looking for a way to legally avoid paying tax.
Yeah, I guess so. For those that are privileged to be able to invest, to be able to recoup in a meaningful way, but it's the way of the future. A friend of mine was out from Australia, and he commented. He said, the last time he was out a couple of years ago, everyone was talking about generators and diesel and KVA, and he said a couple of years later, everyone's talking about solar and these 12B funds, and he said it's just amazing how South Africans, and I guess let's put in perspective, there were some comments about, who has the ability to invest in solar and into these funds, but how just this whole energy sector is transitioning it at the speed of light.
But there are a lot of people who are making money out of this. I mean, we see people importing trolley inverters and power banks into the country, and the installers who are putting in thousands and thousands of installations every single month in terms of solar onto people's homes. It's created enormous opportunity, and quite incredible that people like Jonty and Jeff have found the tax opportunity where all of us can in some way take advantage of the tax breaks that are being offered in order to incentivize us to get off the Eskom grid.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think over time, I think it is going to also have an impact, for example, in my space in terms of the residential property market. So when you're buying intersectional title complexes that have got a sustainable energy solution, you know, I think it's going to enhance the value of those properties over time.
Herschel, I'd like to just jump in here. We have got a project that we did in Boksburg. It's on a main road. It's a big complex, 300 odd units. This particular complex was one of the first that we actually put in battery storage. And it actually got a waiting list for tenants because of the fact that it's got a battery, your energy security, and there's a premium. There's a rental of about 10% to 15% premium in this particular complex because of the energy security.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, John T, I see Tony's posted. Is there a risk that somehow Eskom comes right and no one wants this?
No, I don't think there's a risk. So, a couple of things. So one is the energy minister has said, in fact, the chairman of Eskom, Paul Makwana, has said that the objective in the next 2 years is to get generating capacity to 70%. So we know at the very least for the next 2 years, we're going to have load shedding. So from our perspective, we're providing solutions to corporates who want uninterrupted electricity. So we know for the next 2 years, they're going to have it. But over that same period, the cost of electricity is going to go up. So if you look at the rate that we sell electricity to these corporates, it's lower than Eskom. So they're incentivized to continue to pass. Even if Eskom comes right, it still makes sense for them to do business with companies like ourselves because they're getting a cheaper price. So even if Eskom comes right, the opportunity in solar, I think, is here for the next 15 years.
But Hirsch, I think the point you were making earlier is that this is investment for people who've got spare cash. You know, don't go into debt in order to do this. If you've got spare cash and if you're lucky enough to have a tax problem, then this is a great solution for you to make sure that the receiver of revenue helps fund a lot of the green energy out there, and you can take advantage of that as well.
Yep, absolutely. And you know, directly it solves a national problem, because that's the only way over time you're going to get a matching of supply and demand by a much bigger contribution from the private sector in terms of energy generation that actually moves the needle.
So as we close tonight, because our needle has moved past 10 o'clock, John T. Sachs, last word of advice from you.
Yeah, I think just to echo what you're saying, Howie, this is not an investment for a person who's not in the highest tax bracket, in my personal view. So unless you sell the property, share portfolio, received a huge bonus from your company that you work for, if you aren't in that position, this is not for you. You want to be in a serious tax position. And I think the fact that you're getting such an enormous refund at the highest tax bracket makes, for me, this investment almost a no-brainer. It comes with risk, but the refund is really something not to be ignored.
So Jeff Miller, that means the last speaker of the evening and the last bit of word of advice actually is to you. Tell us, our listeners, and viewers, what they need to know.
So my pearls of wisdom is that if you are a taxpayer, and rather than wanting to pay tax, and you know where that tax may land up, rather invest it into a 12B fund. You'll get the tax benefits, you'll get your cash on cash returns, your cash yield every single year. You are also doing something for the country, you're doing something good for the climate, as Chris said earlier. It's green, you're saving water. And all in all, I think it's a very, very sound investment in low to moderate risk.
That brings us to the end of the evening. A huge thank you, John T. and Jeff. Thank you so much for giving us that great advice. We certainly hope that a lot of people watching us tonight on Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom take advantage of this amazing tax offer that both of you have presented to us. So thank you for joining us this evening. And with that, Hirsch, that brings this evening to a resounding close. I think we've covered so much ground tonight. If you think we started with Chris Yelland giving predictions of where we're going to be over the next 6 to 12 months with Eskom, and then we've continued from candles, wood burning, gas stoves, power banks, trolleys, inverters, batteries. I think my head is a little fried after all of this electricity tonight.
I think we have, Howie, and I think, listen, what I like some of the comments just around try and just work out what the objective is. Are you just trying to manage yourself through load shedding, or are you actually trying to save electricity, or are you trying to and I think there are multiple solutions. So this whole solar is, but there are a whole host of solutions in between that will get you through, keep your lights on, keep your Wi-Fi on, keep your TV on, and your computer. And as we've discussed before, if you can keep the lights on at a bare minimum, all the better, because it's hard to be an optimist in the dark.
I am an eternal optimist, and I waited until a few weeks ago to install my solar, and I cannot believe I didn't do it a year ago, because it has completely changed my life. And I had globes with batteries in, but the truth is I have no idea if the electricity is on or off. And I live my normal life, and I know my parents go outside and see if their next door neighbors have electricity or not. That's the only way they know if their electricity is on or off, because they have solar as well. So I think we have to do those little things that make life in South Africa a little more bearable. And it comes, unfortunately, as a cost, but it also comes with some great opportunities that allows us to save tax while doing good. And that's part of the amazing things that we've heard this evening. So to everyone who's watched us tonight, a huge thank you for joining us. We're going to be back on the weekend. We're going to be showing this remarkable movie called Getting Away with Murders, and we're going to show it only on Zoom and about 4 times. But we hope that tonight we really wanted to do something very practical and help people and hold their hands through this process of deciding what it will take actually to make life bearable and get some electricity, some light, and some warmth back into your life. So thank you for joining us this evening. See you all soon. Good night, everyone.
Right. Cheers, Harry.